How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. A really interesting news story that we'll be covering in today's video. Yesterday, or perhaps the day before, we learned about the death of a United Healthcare CEO named Brian Thompson, who was gunned down in the early morning hours in New York City outside of a Hilton hotel. Now, this story is fascinating for a number of reasons. On the surface, you have a guy who may have been fed up with the American healthcare system and went to the lengths of killing a CEO due to denied coverage or something else. Perhaps it was a hired hitman of someone who experienced that. But what's truly the most interesting thing about this news story is the numerology that's tucked right beneath the surface. The story of the death of Brian Thompson has dominated headlines all over the mainstream news this week, and it's prompted a lot of discussions, both of the healthcare system in the United States, but also executive pay and executive security. These things may be undergoing drastic changes after this incident occurred. Now, on this channel, we discuss the numerology of news stories, particularly ones that dominate the news, such as this one. And indeed, the killing of Brian Thompson seems to be everywhere you look. The United Healthcare CEO was gunned down outside of the New York Hilton Midtown. Notice how this happened on a date with numerology of 60 and 24. These numbers, achieved by simply adding the digits in the date as you would say them out loud. 12 plus 4 plus 20 plus 24 equals 60. Also, this date had a life lesson number of 24. This brings us to the language of Gematria, the number lettering system that's used to cipher and encode these popular news stories. Well, in the alphabetic order, the word hotel equals 60, while in reduction, it sums to 24. Also in that reduction method, also called Pythagorean gematria, where every letter is reduced to a single digit. New York City, also with this sum of 60, all matching up with the date numerology. And indeed, it is the hotel that this occurred in front of that gives us the keys to the engine that drives this riddle home. The New York Hilton Midtown is part of a number of properties owned by Hilton Hotels and Resorts, a company which dates back more than a century, 1919, founded as Hilton Hotels by an executive named Conrad Hilton, who obviously used his name for the business. And I think that we're in the 4th or 5th generation now of Hiltons who still run this chain. Notice how Conrad Hilton was exactly 1,640 weeks old when he founded his corporation. Well, these are the same digits found in the CEO killed outside of one of his hotels. Brian Thompson, in the standard alphabetic order, sums to 164. The company that he was a CEO at, United Healthcare, has matching gematria with ritual sacrifice, 154 ordinal, and 73 reduction. And indeed, it does look like a story of ritual sacrifice that we're uncoding here. The phrase ritual sacrifice also sums to 616. And later on in this video, we're going to talk about how this story syncs up with the eclipse code. Brian Thompson was murdered in New York 616 days before the next total solar eclipse to pass over the United States. Perhaps the most famous assassination in the history of the United States was JFK, whose name also has the 616 in that same Latin gematria cipher. This method, taught in every video, gives us much larger numbers but leaves less room for coincidence. And as you'll see, this is what I believe the most significant method. The Latin cipher is a slightly different derivation of the standard method, which uses the current 26-letter alphabet with the numbers structured identically. You'll notice that United Healthcare sums to 919, which is an upside-down 616. Well, the man who founded the Hilton and Hotels Corporation passed away at the age of 91 years and 9 days. Whether you write out Conrad Hilton, his full name Conrad Nicholson Hilton, or just Conrad, you get Gematria of 107, which all represent the number 17. This CEO, Brian Robert Thompson, his full name also sums to 107. And look at the date he was born. The 10th of July, or the date written 10/7. New York Hilton Midtown, the name of the hotel he was shot at, also sums to 107, just like Hilton Hotels and Resorts. The word shooting is 107. So is the city of Minnetonka, Minnesota. That's the city that United Health Group Incorporated is headquartered at. Minnetonka, Minnesota. If you measure between the birthdays of Hilton and Thompson, we even find that they were born 1,070 lunar phases apart from one another, giving us another 107. The same digits found in the Latin gematria of moon. And a lunar phase is a measurement of the orbit of the moon. A lunar phase is a little bit longer than a synodic month, which measures the orbital period in relation to the stars. So become familiar with these measurements, the synodic and the sidereal month, as these are important to the riddle that played out. 17, of course, also a number connected to the kill and ritual sacrifice code, as I commonly teach on this channel. United Health Group, being from Minnetonka, Minnesota, this is an important part to the symbolism of this story. Minnesota is home to Major League Baseball's Twins. Twins. This is pretty interesting because if you look up the name Thompson, we find that the etymology of this name means twin. Primarily, Thompson means twin. Now, this happened in New York City. Back in 2001, the Twin Towers were destroyed. And indeed, this is another significant piece of the puzzle. And the relationship between Hilton Hotels and the Twin Towers can never be overlooked. Remember back on September 11th, this tall, slim, black hotel, the skyscraper that sat right next to the World Trade Center, this is a Hilton hotel, the Hilton Millennium there in New York City, right in clear view of anyone who watched these attacks pan out. Now, rather interestingly, this hotel is almost identical to the design of the monolith in a 1968 film called 2001, A Space Odyssey, where these monkeys come across the monolith and then experience evolution into the future. Later in the film, one of these monoliths is uncovered on the moon beneath the lunar surface. And again, this all ties into what we'll be discussing in this decode. In fact, if you watch that film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, as the main characters travel to their space station near the moon, they arrive at a space station that contains a Hilton hotel. That's right, this corporation is featured in this big-budget Hollywood film. And I thought it was interesting, too, that Stanley Kubrick, the director of this movie, if you measure from his death to the 9/11 attacks, notice how you get this 919 days, which is one of the numbers I opened up with, all connected to the ritual sacrifice code, United Healthcare, and the age of Conrad Hilton when he died. In fact, the name Hilton has strong overlap in Gematria with World Trade Center. Notice the number 589, which is also the Latin value of United Healthcare. So hold on to your hats because this gets even crazier. In Sumerian Gematria, which is an important method based in the alphabetic order, which with each letter multiplied by 6, this cipher is said to reveal the number of the beast. And using this method, the city of New York equals 666. If you happen to be familiar with my work, the number 666 and 616 are of utmost significance not only to the biblical beast in the book of Revelation, but also this sun, moon, and eclipse system that we talk about so often. Measuring from the date of the founding of Hilton Hotels and Resorts to the opening of the World Trade Center, a complex which was officially inaugurated back on April 4th of 1973, exactly 666 lunar phases or synodic months after Hilton's founding. Furthermore, the World Trade Center's inauguration date was also exactly 1140 sidereal months after the birth of Conrad Hilton. 114 is a significant number to the Tower, an important card to the tarot deck, which is number 16. The Tower equals 114. The Tower XVI, 1014 as well. So from the date 2001 A Space Odyssey was first released, April 3rd of 1968, just one day off of the World Trade Center's inauguration date. Notice how Conrad Hilton died exactly 133 lunar phases after that movie came out. And in the alphabetic order, the name Conrad Hilton equals 133. Another important detail about this shooting is the time that it was reported at. Notice how this occurred at 6:45 a.m. Well, 6:45 a.m. is the 405th minute of the day, counting each minute from midnight to 6:45 a.m. Well, 405 is the gematria of the name Conrad Hilton in 2 ciphers, not only the significant Latin method, but also primes, based in the alphabetic order, but only with prime numbers used. We get a double 405 for Conrad Hilton. It's incredible. But not only was Conrad Hilton's death aligned with that film, so was the birth of CEO Brian Thompson, who was born 6 years, 3 months, and 7 days after the release of the film. Well, not only do we get the 637 in that measurement, but also notice the lunation number he was born under. As a reminder, every new moon since 1923 has been numbered. And what do you know? Brian Thompson, born during lunation number 637. The same number we get when we measure to A Space Odyssey. These digits also found in Hilton's full name and World Trade Center. But if you actually measure from the destruction of the World Trade Center to the murder of Brian Thompson, you get 287 lunar phases. Once again, this happened at the New York Hilton Midtown, which in the alphabetic order equals 287. Thompson flew to New York from the headquarters in Minnetonka, Minnesota, which also shares this 287. I also had some notes with the number 33 here. Again, my blog post is linked below down in the description if you want to see some more notes related to this. But what I want to look at next is how this connects to the Tisha B'Av riddle. Now, on the Jewish calendar, there's a day of commemoration each year called Tisha B'Av, or the 9th of Av, which is a date set aside to commemorate the destruction of the two temples in Jerusalem. And it certainly doesn't seem like a coincidence that Tisha B'Av sums to 911 in Gematria, when September 11th, 9/11, is the date that our two towers plummeted in New York City. Notice how both Solomon's Temple and Herod's Temple, which was the name of the second temple, Solomon's was the first, both of these temples have gematria of 68. When construction first began on the World Trade Center, it was on the 6th of August, or 6/8 of the year 68. The film A Space Odyssey came out in the year 68. And of course, it has 2001 in the title, which is the year that the towers came down. Measuring from the release of A Space Odyssey in the year 68 to the murder of Brian Thompson was exactly 680 months. Well, plus 1 day, I suppose. So you can hang me over that one. In standard gematria, the name CEO equals 68. Now, the 68th prime number is 337. Thompson dead a span of 337 days after January 3rd, which is the date that Conrad Hilton died back in 1979. But what's more interesting is that this was also 1,337 days after he became the CEO of United Healthcare. 1337 is the standard gematria of World Trade Center, while New York City has the 2337. So 68, 337. These numbers intricately linked, as we see right here on my number properties page. But in addition to the number 68, what about 58, which may be even more significant? Solomon's Temple, Second Temple, Herod's Temple, Third Temple, Jerusalem, and Twin Towers all equal 58 in the reduction methods of gematria. April 3rd, the date of Space Odyssey's release, not only is that 58 days before the founding of Hilton Hotels, which was featured in the film, but it was also 5 months and 8 days before September 11th. Well, in gematria, CEO has double values of 58 in Latin and reverse. Now, the 58th prime number is 271, and this brings us to the last piece before we move on to the Jesuit eclipse riddle. When Brian Thompson was appointed as the CEO of the company, he was 271 days after his birthday. And in the reverse order, his full name, Brian Robert Thompson, equals 271. Just like Hilton Hotels and Resorts, 271 ordinal. Not only did the World Trade Center open on the date that leaves 271 days in the year, but the 271st day of a leap year gives us the founding of the Jesuit order, September 27th of 1540, a leap year. Again, the 271st day of the year, the 58th prime number, circling back to CEO and this whole Solomon's Temple riddle. So for the next and regretfully maybe even longer part of this video, I'm going to explain how this all comes together through the Jesuit eclipse code. And of course, this is visible on their symbol alone. The IHS, the sun with the rays visible. Now, typically you can only really see the corona or the rays of the sun during a total solar eclipse. And as you will see, the numerology lines up quite well for this story. Using the S exception of Gematria, which is the same as full Pythagorean reduction, the only difference being the letter S, total eclipse equals 56. When Hilton Hotels and Resorts was first founded back in the year 1919, it was on a date with a life lesson number of 56. When 2001 A Space Odyssey came out, it was during lunation number 560. Brian Thompson was killed 56 years after that movie came out. In Latin Gematria, the name Brian Thompson equals 560. Now, if you think about it, it's actually less likely to get a 56 in this cipher, even including the zeros, again, because these numbers are so large. 56 is also the single reduction value of assassin. Without the S exception, Society of Jesus also gives us the 56. But check this out. This is where it gets wild, once again. Maybe I say that too often, but as I commonly say, I wouldn't be doing these videos if these facts did not blow my mind. So the 56th prime number is 263, and would you believe how old he was when he died? Exactly 2,630 weeks old. But that's not it. Measuring from the founding date of the Jesuit order to his birth and his death, you get 22,633 weeks, 22633. And to his death, you get 25,263 weeks, which ends with the 263. Now, with all this twin symbolism, right? We're talking about a guy named Thompson, whose name literally means twin. Well, recently, we had the completion of the twin eclipses over the United States. Measuring from the date of this first eclipse back in 2017 to the date of his death, 2,663 days. What an incredible script. But of course, there is more. And maybe this is even more fascinating. Brian Thompson's July 10th birthday is the 191st day of the year. He was assassinated exactly 191 weeks after he became the CEO of the company. And in the reverse order, assassination equals 191. And this story is a clear, cut and dry, indisputable tribute to Conrad Hilton, whose name also equals 191. The Jesuits are perhaps more formally known as the Society of Jesus. And of course, Society of Jesus equals 191. But I also want to point out the value of 187 in reverse. Thompson was gunned down 187 days after the anniversary of Hilton hotels. And check out the gematria on this sick player. CEO Brian Thompson equals 187. Think about this in relation to the homicide code, right? 187 on a motherfucking cop, you know? Shut up. I don't rap on this channel for a reason, all right? But that's not all. If you just write out Brian Thompson, you get 187 reverse. And if you write out his full name, Brian Robert Thompson, well, now you get 1187. So this guy was killed in the year 2024. And this has been a tremendous year for riddles connected to the Society of Jesus, which gives us this same 224 gematria that we find in the year. In reduction, the Society of Jesus also equals 71, which is a bit like Brian's birthday, July 10th. 710, a lot like 71. But what about the 91? Well, Thompson was born on a date with standard numerology of 91. And in reverse, his first name equals 91. Meanwhile, the Jesuits, founded all the way back in 1540 on another date with 91 numerology. Thompson's birthday falls 286 days after the Jesuit founding date. Not only does Jesuit order equal 286 with capital letters, but the Society of Jesus equals the 286th prime number on top of it. So this guy has always clearly been linked numerically to this organization. Maybe he was a member, I don't know. So the Jesuits are very concerned, externally anyway, with praise, worship of Jesus. And this brings us to the crucifixion part of the riddle. Remember, 3 of the 4 Gospels tell of darkness falling over the sky during the crucifixion, which is typically only happening during an eclipse. 74 is the big number for Jesus. Killing, cross, Messiah, gospel, plus Jesus, all summing to 74 ordinal. When Brian Thompson was appointed the CEO of United Healthcare, it was on the 7th of April, which is the date written 7/4 in most of the world. And what do you know? This guy was born in the year 74. He was born on the date leaving 174 days in the year 74. And look at his name, Brian Thompson. Not only does it equal 74, but it's also 740. Hilton Hotels, founded on a 74 date, just as well. And this brings us to the significant alignment with New York. What I love about the gematria of New York is that it sums to 373 in the prime number cipher. And 373 is the 74th prime number. So it makes sense, right? I don't use this cipher very often, but when there's a prime number connection directly to the meridian that cuts through the city, that's right, look how close the World Trade Center complex is to the 74th meridian that slices directly through the Manhattan Island. But not only was Brian Thompson born in the year 74, United Health Group was originally founded in that same year, 74. However, they changed their name 3 years later in 77. Seems clever, right? Jesus' last name, Christ, equals 77. The name Jesus Christ, in turn, is 151, just like Manhattan Island. Manhattan Island equals 151. Manhattan on its own is another 151 reverse. Hilton Hotel not only had the 74 date numerology, but it was also the 151st day of the year. So it was like a double Jesus date that Hilton was founded. And then Brian Thompson's full name is the 151st prime number, giving him this awesome prime connection to Jesus Christ. Now, look at how old Brian Thompson was for the 9/11 attacks. 9,925 days old. The name Jesus Christ is 925 in standard. And September 11th happens to be the date that many Christians actually believe Jesus was born. So just droning on a little bit as I try to wrap this video up. Brian Thompson had birth numerology of 110. And that's a pretty interesting number, connected to the World Trade Center, which was 110 stories. A 110-meter antenna. Rockefeller equals 110. And if I'm not mistaken, the conference that Thompson was on his way to was at Rockefeller Center. Osama bin Laden, 911, all 110. UHC 110. Hilton Hotels was exactly 1,100 sidereal months old for the 9/11 attacks. I thought that was a premium find right there. Now, if you measure from the opening of the World Trade Center, or its inauguration, to the birth of Brian Thompson, you even get 15 months and 6 days. Well, that's awesome because 911 is the 156th prime number. The name Brian equals 44, like how the inauguration date was 4/4, April 4th. Meanwhile, Hilton Hotels incorporated during Brown Lunation -44, so it just keeps going. The divisors of 44 equal 84. Thompson was killed 84 days after the anniversary of 9/11, matching Hilton, United Health Group, and the Jesuit Order. Now, the 84th prime number is 433. Brian Thompson was born 433 years after the founding of the Jesuit Order, and 4,033 days after the opening of the hotel he died at. Now, this graphic is slightly wrong. Let me pull this up here instead. Conrad Hilton, the founder of Hilton Hotels, look at the lunation number he was born under. -433. And what's so cool about 433? Solar eclipse equals 433 in Latin. Now, what's interesting is that this murder occurred on December 4th. Just 3 years ago, we had a total solar eclipse on December 4th down at the South Pole, or at the ice wall, if you believe in that. And I noticed these digits 124 kept popping up. Of course, he died on 12/4, which was 124 days before the anniversary of his appointment as CEO. Remember, the Tower is the 16th card of the tarot deck. 16th equaling 124. But look at this. 1240 is the Latin gematria of the number 518. And maybe this is a stretch, I don't think so. But Thompson was killed 50,018 days after Conrad Hilton was born, and died exactly 51 years and 8 months after the World Trade Center was open. So to me, this is an example of spiraling, right? This is where we start to get a little bit dizzy. The drain is starting to spin. We're getting that whirlpool effect. We're starting to spell out numbers. You know what I'm saying? This is where I try to end my decodes, but seems to be a crucifixion code with this as well. Dying 240 days after the eclipse, matching the gematria of Hilton, 240. So once again, if you want to see more, this blog, as always, is linked down below in the description. Feel free to check out my channel. I made 3 videos in the last 3 days after taking a couple of weeks off. Not really off so much as, you know, going through holiday stuff and dealing with a little bit of a cold, but hopefully, as you can tell by my voice, I'm starting to get over that. But yeah, check that work out. It's all been the same theme. Eclipse codes, the moon, kind of my specialty, right? And it's always fascinating how this stuff happens in chunks. This story about South Korean martial law, which has the Korean flag inside the eclipse. Remember, that happened on December 3rd and then ended on December 4th. Well, December 3rd was the date we learned about Eminem's mom dying. And now this guy killed on December 4th. So, you know, I could have made a super stream out of these, showing how these are all linked together. And a lot of the same numbers in these first 2 videos especially. So check those out if you haven't. But for now, that'll do it for this video. Thanks to everybody for checking it out. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to all you beautiful souls next time. See ya.